Hey, what's up, everybody? I'd like to welcome you back to the Audio Programmer Podcast. And this week we have a guest who's a friend of mine, and we've known each other for a while, and he's a developer that I really look up to. His name is Nick Thompson. How you doing, Nick?
Great, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Nick is the CEO and lead developer of Creative Intent. And they've come out, Nick is just a one-person shop. He does it all himself. So Nick makes some really interesting plugins, and he has a very big announcement that he's going to make in just a couple minutes about something really amazing that he's done. But before we get started, just a few quick announcements. If you appreciate what's happening here on the Audio Programmer, be sure to support the Patreon. So it's on theaudioprogrammer.com / oh, I actually messed that up. It's actually on patreon.com / the Audio Programmer. So we have t-shirts and various rewards that we give, and we appreciate any support that you give. So let's go ahead and kick things off, Nick. So you've been really working hard in the lab on this new project. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, of course. So what I'm working on is basically a back-end rendering. Let me put it this way. It's basically React Native for JUCE. So I'm working on a new plugin for my company, and the UI is completely written in React, plain regular React, what a lot of people know and love. But the backend is written in JUCE, and so all of the instructions for like creating component elements and setting like Flexbox properties happens on the JUCE side. So my plugin's UI is written in React, but my plugin itself is just a JUCE plugin, like the same JUCE plugins that it uses the same JUCE primitives that we've been using for years.
Amazing. So basically what you're saying is that the back end, the underlying kind of DSP is written in JUCE, but the front end is written in React. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, even more than the DSP. So the UI that I'm shipping is all just JUCE components in the same way that my previous plugins were all just JUCE components. But React takes care of constructing sort of the component hierarchy, setting properties on the components, such as like their Flexbox properties, and then instructing my root level JUCE component for how to construct this tree, when to lay it out, how to paint the components. Mm-hmm. And then, so there's actually, it's all really JUCE under the hood. I just have bindings to be able to take instructions from React.
That's amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about what sort of advantages you feel that this offers for developers? What sort of possibilities does this offer?
Yeah, I mean, so, I've been using React for, I guess, like 6 years or so now. And at first, when I first started using it, it was a complete like 180 in terms of like conceptualizing how to architect a user interface. And for me, that was a really, really awesome like challenge and hurdle to overcome, because after that, I feel like my ability to build a complicated user interface simply, I don't know, I guess I feel like I have a tool that lets me do that now. And so, ever since I learned it, I've got kind of reached to React for building my interfaces. And then when I got into JUCE a couple years ago, it was a totally different setting, totally different environment. Mm-hmm. And I had to relearn kind of how to build a UI. And I did that with all of the examples that JUCE has. Mm. And it felt so much harder. Uh-huh. So, and I missed basically, as I built a few UIs now. I've shipped a couple of plugins, both for my company and for clients. And I've built my UIs with the JUCE primitives that we have. And I just missed writing in React. I missed the like ease and the simplicity that kind of enable. And so to me, that's the major piece, is being able to like have that tool in my arsenal again for writing audio software. And then there's kind of the flip side, which is just that, writing an interface in React for me is a lot faster. There's, like the npm package repository has tons of code out there that I can just like pull and load into my audio app. Which I don't know, it's just it feels super quick. Like this plugin UI, the plugin that I'm working on now and the one that I'm about to release, the UI that's written in React, it moved so much faster than the UIs that I built in my previous plugins.
Yeah, can you just talk a little bit more for most of the UIs that I've ever built? I've built some stuff in JavaScript, but most of the stuff that I've built has been in JUCE. So can you just tell me, in terms of when you say quicker and easier, to me, I've heard so many people say this about, well, if only I could build my UI in React, or and so many people have said that to me, and I'm really curious just to know a little bit more about exactly what is it that makes it easier. Why is it easier? Why is it quicker? What is it? Because JUCE has a Flexbox class, don't they? So what makes it easier about doing it in React with the Flexbox in JavaScript versus JUCE?
Yeah. So, for me, one of the major talking points here is like just the imperative versus declarative programming style, and the examples that I've seen. And some of the ways that I've written my JUCE plugins are very imperative. Like construct this component, attach it here, set its size here. And there's a lot of like you have this, even on the JUCE tutorials, you start with a rectangle that you know about, and you like slice off a piece, put a component there, slice off a piece, put a new component there. It's very step by step. You have to name every step. You have to like lay it all out. And it feels a little bit more like the declarative model is saying, like, I can kind of just describe what I want without having to go through every line and being explicit about specifically what needs to happen to every component. I can just generally say, like, I want this one to be flexible and then to have a couple children that share the space, figure it out for me. And, JUCE has this in Flexbox, but it's still, JUCE has a Flexbox implementation, I'll say, but it is still... it's still an imperative programming style to describe the Flex constraints within the JUCE environment.
I see.
So, basically the switch to declarative is a huge win for me. But then there's kind of the other piece that React brings to the table in my head is that we're talking declarative, but also we're talking about this sort of like functional programming approach to writing a user interface, which is describing your application as a function of the application state. You just describe it once. You don't have to worry about like mutations in the UI. React will just like look at what you've described and figure out how to make that happen for you.
Wow. And what about painting? What about repainting components? And does React handle that differently than JUCE does, or how does that work under the hood?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the pieces that I think could be pretty exciting. And the reason I say that is because what I'm using React for is more or less to like construct the application, but the primitives underneath, like the view primitives, are actually just JUCE components. And so one of the features of the framework is that you can create your own JUCE component with the same resized and paint methods that you're used to, and then kind of register it with the React application so that you can use it in your description of the user interface on the React side. And React will basically just tell JUCE, like, hey, we need that custom component here and with these bounds, but run the paint method that was written.
Amazing. And so this is a submodule that's written for JUCE. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully it's a pretty easy installation process.
Nice. And what are your plans for it? Are you going to license it, or what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, good question. I wasn't quite sure at first, but the more time I've spent on it, the more it feels to me like this project will kind of reach its potential if people get involved and get excited about it. You know, and so as I've been developing it, I've also realized that what I want is for people to be excited about it and people to help me, because basically help me make it better. Because if I wrote it all myself, it would be okay. I mean, I think I have a pretty good start, but you know, there's so many smart people who are involved in the JUCE community that if they get excited about it and they get involved, this could be a totally different beast in a lot of ways. And so that's what I want to do. I want to share it, and I want to hopefully get people excited and see what we can do together.
Nice. So will people be able to download it and use it? How do people find it?
Yeah, for sure. I hope that people download it and use it.
Yeah.
People find it. I mean, I'm going to put it on. It'll be on GitHub. I'm going to put it on the JUCE forums. I'm going to share it in the audio programmer community. This podcast is a way to help to spread the news.
Yeah. Well, we'll put a link to Nick's GitHub below. But what's your GitHub link for people that are looking to find it?
Nick Thompson. Nick-Thompson.
Yeah.
Or dash.
So that's THOMPSON.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. And is it possible to show us a little bit of it?
Yeah, of course. I don't know. We'll have to be descriptive for the podcast listeners.
Yeah. We'll describe it the best we can. And so we're going to get the first sneak peek of your new plugin as well, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's hear a little bit about that. What's the plugin?
So the plugin is a grain delay effect, similar to the grain delay that you have in Ableton Live, but I kind of wanted to get. I don't know. I was interested in seeing what I could do with my own shot at that sort of same mechanic. So what it operates around is sort of two parallel grain engines operating off of the same shared delay buffer, and they have like some of the classic features for like grain size and grain pitch and such. But then the two different grain engines feed back into themselves, but also feed back into one another a variable amount. So you can kind of get like this. I think of it kind of like a figure eight of signal flow through different grain engines. And I like it. It's pretty cool.
Wow! And did you do all of the DSP algorithms yourself as well?
Yeah, I did all of the prototyping in Max MSP, and then brought that over to JUCE.
Wow! So your DSP knowledge must be pretty up to shape then.
I don't know. I feel comfortable with Max.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
How did you learn? How did you learn the math side, the DSP side of audio programming?
Trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I probably had a path into DSP that a lot of newcomers, would recognize, because professionally, my career started in web development, working in JavaScript.
Yeah.
And it was that way for years. And so as I started to understand the potential to write a plugin or the potential to write audio software, I realized I had to learn some DSP, and I kind of just bought textbooks and started reading.
Yeah.
I was really bad at it for a long time, and I still think that I'm really not very good at it, but I can at least.
Are there any textbooks that you would name that were particularly influential for you?
Yeah, I read pretty much the whole series from Julius Smith from the CCRMA program.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why actually. I think I just like found those textbooks on Amazon. Like,
Julia Smith, you said?
Yeah.
Don't think I'm familiar with those. Do you remember the name of the books themselves?
I could try to pull it off my shelf.
I'm putting you on the spot.
It's
Okay.
actually a great one.
Yeah. Okay. So they're the Karma series by Julia Smith.
Yeah, Julius Smith is I believe he's a professor at Stanford in the Karma program,
Okay.
and he's really involved in the Faust project, the functional audio stream language. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm vaguely familiar with it. It's been in a lot of discussions lately.
Yeah,
But
it is
yeah,
a very cool project.
yeah. And Karma, for people that don't know, that's spelled CCRMA.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it stands for off the top of my head. I'm going to look it up right here. Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics. So it's probably one of the most prestigious programs in terms of audio and computing in the world. A number of people, a number of alumni have gone on to do great things there. I know Spencer Salazar. He's a graduate of Karma, I believe, and he's the CTO at Output. So big shout out to Spencer if you're listening. And there are a few others. There are numerous others actually. And most others, I would almost go on to say, yeah, many. But yeah, great. So Julia Smith. So we'll have to keep a look. We'll have to keep a lookout for those. Great. So cool. So a granular delay with 2 grain engines that kind of what's the word? Feed into each other. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Can we see it?
Yes. Let me switch this over.
Yeah. I'm really curious to. I've actually got Will Perkel's new book. I don't know if you've seen it, but
Mine showed up yesterday.
yeah. Oh, did it? There's actually I've been meaning to check it out. That's been a book that's been influential for a lot of people. A lot of people ask me about books. That's definitely a book that comes up a lot for people that know a little bit of DSP. That's building audio effect plugins in C++ with Will Perkel. That's a really good one. What other good ones are there? There's Music Mathics by Gareth Loy. That's really good. There are 2 volumes of that. Those are really good. At some point, we'll have to do it. We'll have to do a book walkthrough. Great book, great DSP books. Also, Eric Tarr's got a great one. I think it's called Design. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it's in MATLAB and it's a DSP book. If you've never written a line of code and you want to get into building audio plugins, that's a great book by Eric Tarr. It's called Hack Audio. That's what it's called, Hack Audio, and it's in MATLAB. And he takes you from the very start if you have no DSP knowledge whatsoever, and it goes very slow and it's really good. Okay, so here it is. So we have Remnant. So this is a really interesting interface. Can you tell us a little bit about the interface and what it does?
Yeah. So I meant to jump in earlier. So Creative Intent is, it's pretty much just me, but my buddy Mike does all of the everything visual for Creative Intent, and you can check him out. You can find him at seizdigital.com. He does amazing work. So he and I sat down to talk about Remnant, and at this time he knew about the framework that I was working on, and we also we're aiming for a UI that we could take to iOS, and part of what that meant for us was kind of like flexible layout. So this is totally resizable, and I realized that would be helpful for getting to iOS because The last plugin that I wrote, I ported to iOS, and it was not resizable, and it's kind of a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we took those constraints in mind, and then we also tried to. So basically, we ended up thinking like, all right, let's go flat, let's go vector, but we also wanted to try to break away from the traditional aesthetic of an audio plugin. Like so many audio plugins are kind of just knobs and sliders, and some of them are really cool, some of them are really kind of standard, I guess I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of an experiment how this aesthetic will work out. But these kind of boxes are an attempt to replace the slider kind of with something that is more visually engaging to communicate to you, or to try to communicate to you what is happening as you're turning the knob. So these boxes are all interactive. And you'll see this like blue line going around the edge. That's kind of our meter, like a classic knob. But the visualization inside the box is there to try to communicate. So like what's happening here is these are actually like the windows that I apply to the grains that come out of this engine. They're spaced just like this with that overlap property. And at max grain frequency, there's just a ton. So, and then similarly, the spray control, this is kind of like grain read offset randomness. And so I wanted this kind of like noisy, randomness visualization. And so that was the attempt. And then we have a couple more classic knobs up along the top and buttons on the bottom. So this is, I'll say too that this is a beta UI. Like this is the piece that we're working on mostly now. So it may not look like this when it gets out to the public, but we'll see.
And do you have a release date for it?
Aiming for early August.
Okay, great.
It is in beta right now, so we'll see.
And so what is it that you're doing now over this next month or month and a half? Because aesthetically it looks finished. So what is it what else needs to be done?
Well, we have a few questions that we want to tackle aesthetically. For example, this like meter rolling around the edge of the box, that was kind of my, just kind of a random idea that I threw out and implemented just to see how it would feel. And I think the consensus between Mike and I right now is that it's a little bit, I'll say, maybe like visually chaotic. And so maybe we need to dial that back. And similarly, like the text layout here, it's not, and maybe it's not entirely clear that that's related to this knob until you turn it. So, little things. We've kind of just we feel good about this direction. We feel good about the current status, but we're going to just try to hone it in a little bit. Yeah,
that was the one kind of bit of constructive feedback that I was going to give you, was that it took me a second to understand, because I thought that those sections along the top, delay, cutoff, warp, and so on, were actually different sections that you could click on, and then those go into different things rather than being associated with that knob.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great feedback.
Yeah, great. But it looks really nice, and I really like the fact that it looks like one of these type of plugins that you get to explore, and you're more kind of listening with your ears rather than really trying to kind of be a scientist and trying to really tweak things that like the each section doesn't really have a word or anything that's kind of associated with it. It just has a picture, and I like the idea of that. Oh, you actually have them along the bottom, frequency spray. Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, that's kind of the, that's part of the intention, I'll say.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it looks like one of these. It looks like the type of plugin that you could just throw on there, and you say, "Oh, I'm looking for something super interesting. I don't know precisely what I'm looking for, but some sort of interesting delay, granular type of effect." And you throw this on and go exploring, and I like the idea of that. That looks really cool.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to see how it goes. It's a bit of an experiment in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the code, the way that you have React talking to Juice, can you show us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I'll start just looking at what we're looking at. And maybe maybe for the podcast listeners, I'll say that like we're generally looking at a a plugin that has some knobs and kind of custom sliders.
Yeah.
And the way that this whole thing gets constructed is at the very top level of my plugin editor in JUCE, I have this kind of root React component. And the React component at this point is just a JUCE component, but I can hand it a JavaScript bundle, and it will evaluate the JavaScript bundle in an embedded JavaScript engine and install a couple hooks. So React will run my React application will run in the embedded engine, and it will come up with this description of my user interface as I've written it. And then at the kind of lowest level, React will start issuing calls to construct the user interface that it needs from like the primitive backend elements.
Okay.
And so I receive those calls on the JUCE side and assemble just a set of JUCE components with a set of flexbox constraints and lay them out. And this part goes through the totally classic like resize, like JUCE component resize paint flow. And so similarly, like this button here is a little info segment on the plugin. So when you click it, that click event got pushed into the JavaScript environment and then evaluated. So there's, I have a React handler, like an event handler installed in React that listens for that click event and then changes the state of the application. And in this case, it changes it to show, some help text. And when that happens, similarly, like React will go through the whole process of producing the next tree, the next sort of like description of the UI given the new application state. And then React has this pre-diff algorithm under the hood that was very popular, at least at the time that it came out, because it was pretty different.
Yeah.
It has this notion of the current UI state that is rendered and the new UI state given the new application state that needs to be rendered. And it runs this diff between the two trees and identifies the minimum set of changes that it needs to actually make to get to the and when that happens, it just issues new calls to the JUCE backend to like tear down some components, create new ones, attach them as children, give them boundaries, etc.
Nice. And how does one thing that I'm curious about is how does React relay changes from the UI to the processor? Is that using a value tree or is it using a different system? How do you actually get how do you get the user changes back to the processor itself?
Yeah, it's kind of a roundabout flow. So, as I mentioned, like what actually gets laid out here is JUCE components. And so I can show you a little bit of the code. I will also talk through it for people who are listening on the podcast. But
yeah.
Sorry, I have to pull this up. So this will all be open source shortly, and people will be able to look at it. But basically, what gets actually rendered, what gets actually constructed as a JUCE component. So I override these well-known methods: mouse down, mouse up, mouse drag, and then I have a method on the top level JUCE component for establishing or for pushing events into the JavaScript environment. So first thing that happens is I catch the classic mouse down event on the JUCE component, and I push that event into the JavaScript engine. Then I run the JavaScript engine because there's new things react to that event. So I run the JavaScript engine, and on that side, the application state changes. We construct a new tree. We update the tree, and then the minimal set of changes get pushed back through the kind of bridge to JUCE to actually perform the mutations to what I'll call like the component model. And And so there's a a similar flow for like dragging a slider. So I have the mouse drag event. It goes into JavaScript. The JavaScript reacts by calculating. Like I have my own slider implementation in React. So I'll calculate the mouse offset from the last drag location and use that to set the value of a parameter. So setting the value of a parameter comes back through the JUCE interface, where I have kind of the classic audio processor value tree state
slider attachment.
I'm not even using the slider attachment. I just say like set, what's the method? Set property notifying, set value notifying host.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. So here's what I have here is basically registering a native method in the JavaScript engine. So from JavaScript, I can call set parameter notifying host, and I come in through this block of code, which has a reference to the audio processor value tree state. And so we update the new parameter, and this is potentially buggy here, so ignore that. It's on my list of to-dos.
Yeah.
But so then the audio processor value tree state, here's the change and broadcasts to its listeners, and one of those listeners kind of dispatches that new value back to JavaScript, which here's that update, and then updates the like the stroke around the edge of the knob, for example.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. And in terms of processing power of using just a traditional JUCE UI versus using this React binding, is there a comparison? Is there like a discernible kind of comparison between performance?
Yeah, I mean, I could almost certainly outperform my React application if I were to do it in pure C++ with these JUCE primitives. Because at the very least, I don't have to go back and forth into evaluating JavaScript. But I'll say at least that so far it has been plenty performant. More performant enough that I can't tell as a user that there's anything different going on behind this plugin.
That's really cool. Wow, thanks for showing us that. So once again, you can get this. It's on Nick's GitHub. It's at Nick-Thompson. Is that right?
Yeah.
So github.com/Nick-Thompson, and I'm sure if you're watching the YouTube video, you'll see the link down below as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what people think about it, and what people and also how people extend it as well.
Same, yeah. I'm. It's it's a little bit rough around the edges right now. It's brand new.
Yeah.
But
that's okay.
It's strong enough to. It's complete enough, anyways, to power my next plugin. So
yeah,
that's pretty exciting for me, and I hope that is complete enough for people to want to play with it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know in the audio programmer community, there are loads of professional JavaScript developers that have always been talking about something like this. So I'm excited to see what the community reaction is going to be.
Same, yeah.
And so let's segue with that, talking a little bit more about you and your history. So, of course, we can see that you're a pretty adept JavaScript developer, and that you have a really good knowledge of C++ and JUCE as well. So how did you get started into development, and how did you get started into? You said you did web development before you did audio. Can you tell us just a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, I guess that journey starts a long time ago. I don't know why really, but when I was a kid, I was interested. I somehow became interested in programming. Maybe even was even like MySpace, how you could inject CSS properties into your like bio or something. That might have been the start of it. But at some point, I just went and I think I was 10 or 11 or something. I just went and I bought a For Dummies HTML for Dummies book, and that just like kicked off a lot of time, like sitting in front of a computer as a 10-year-old trying to figure out how to make. I don't even know if I'll call them websites. Trying to make this like dumb little experiment.
Nice.
And then it just like kind of stuck. And before I even got to, before I even went to college, I had written some pretty cool like little JavaScript experiments. And I'm sure if I went and looked back at them right now, I would think they're terrible. But that kind of lit the flame, I'll say. That kind of got me excited. And so then I went to college and I studied computer science, and thus far, like my whole path had been kind of web oriented. I guess just because, because I started with an HTML for Dummies book.
Yeah.
And so when I left college, going into web programming, felt right, I guess.
Yeah. Nice. And once you graduated college, what happened then?
Yeah, so I left college and I went to work. I actually went out to San Francisco and worked for Facebook for a little bit, and that was where I learned React. I got there a couple months after the open source announcement of React, and for the time that I was there, my job was pretty much to rebuild the Instagram website with a small team in React, and there was kind of a first pass done for how to build a website in React when I got there, and we kind of just like, I don't know, took it down and started over again a little bit. Just to, at this time, React was pretty tightly integrated to Facebook, but the open source announcement just happened, and so Instagram, in a way, was like an early adopter of React and helped work through a lot of issues in terms of how do we make this something that like the public can consume and use with ease. So that was kind of what I was working on, just using React and helping to disentangle it from Facebook. And then continued to work in web development for a couple of years. But got into JUCE. Well, I got into audio through web audio initially. Because I've been writing electronic music, or attempting to, since I was a kid as well. And so when web audio came out, it was kind of like, oh, I can work with audio, but work with JavaScript. Like this is for me. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And went down that road a little bit, and that's when I bought the Julius Smith textbooks. And then I don't know how, but I found JUCE, and I like realized all of a sudden that I could write an audio plugin. And man, it was the coolest feeling to write a plugin and then like open up my DAW and see my own plugin there. And so kind of like from that moment forward, I was like, web's not where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you left Facebook at that point, or was this while you were at Facebook, or was this kind of through the years, or?
Yeah, I think I left Facebook and then I found JUCE probably a couple months later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess one question people are probably wondering, because I've had the fortune of having lunch down at Facebook HQ one time late last year, and it's almost like Disneyland. Everything you walk in and everything is free, isn't it? Like every restaurant you go into, you just like, if you want a burrito, you just go up and you just basically pick up a burrito.
Yeah.
And it's really like that. So if you've ever been to Disneyland or Disney World, it's like Main Street USA, but everything is free, pretty much.
Yeah, and like, man, what a I don't know even how to say it. Just like for a kid who just left college, like that's not even reality.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy. And so I'm curious, what people sometimes say, well, wow, you must have been getting paid loads of money, and like, you know, you're living the dream job. So why leave a place like Facebook? So what was your reason, if it's not too personal, of course? But
Sure, yeah. I mean, I still get that question a lot, actually.
yeah,
And you know, the kind of the farther away from it I get, the more I look back on it and just think like my heart wasn't in it. You know?
yeah,
And I think as a kid, you know, as a young, like that early in my career, it felt, you know, I think that's still that was an okay time to leave and try to find the thing that I was really excited about.
yeah,
Because there was there's a big part of me at that time too that was like, I don't know, this is, you know, so many people would kill for this job. Like I'd be stupid to leave it. And that was a real emotion to contend with. But you know, but ultimately, like I'm really glad that I did leave. Just because if I hadn't left, I don't know if I would have like taken the gamble to turn my career towards audio development. And
yeah,
I don't know, the stuff that I'm working on day to day now is just so much more exciting for me. So
yeah.
I make significantly less money, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people that that are outside of the situation that may overestimate the power of money, and there are people, of course, that stay in these sort of jobs and do it just for the money, even though they may hate every minute of it. But what happens is that when that's your reality and that you feel that your heart isn't being fulfilled, that kind of overtakes the financial aspect of it or the financial kind of reward of it. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing you say, but I don't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but that's also like a pretty. I think that's a pretty. I guess I'll say like privileged position to be in, because you know at that time I was young and very early. I mean, I'm still young and still early in my career.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, but you know, I didn't have a family that I needed to take care of. I was very lucky to like not have huge amounts of debt. And so at that time, it's a very privileged position to be able to leave like a nice job like that.
Yeah.
And look for something that kind of is more what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think I'm lucky. I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
And
it seems like you've exponentially expanded your skill set in terms of moving from pure web development all the way over to C++, and your DSP seems to be pretty up at a really good level. So you have the JavaScript, that you've been able to do as a professional, C++ that you've been doing professionally as an independent developer, and that's a pretty fearsome skill set, I think.
I mean, maybe I'm not very good at any of that.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I beg to differ. I've seen you in the community, and yeah, you're pretty deep. You know, in terms of the community and all the developers that I see in there, you're definitely one that's always answering the stickier questions that that I never touch.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I'm just learning, trying to get better still. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of being an independent developer, and you did a talk with the Audio Developer Conference last year on that, didn't you? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that talk was kind of maybe like a retrospective look at me trying to change my career from web to audio. And basically where that came from was, you know, around 2000, whatever it was, 2015 or something, when I was discovering JUCE, when I was discovering, at this time I had written a bunch of things in web audio, but I really wanted to get into like, low-level audio software. And so at that time, I put out a bunch of job applications, for all the companies that Native Instruments and Splice, I think, and I don't know, just like I put my resume everywhere, and of course, like I didn't have the qualifications for that role. I'm a web programmer at that time, trying to get into roles that need C++ experience, that need audio experience, and my resume just like didn't have it. I got one offer, I think, for like somebody replied saying like, oh, well, we don't want you for that position, but we do have an open web developer position.
Oh man.
So that was, I realized that I was going to have to like do some real work if I wanted to change my career path into this industry. And so I didn't know how to do that at first, and I stayed in web for several more years. And basically my game plan became make some audio software and share it. And I did that, and then once I had, I had one plugin out and another one on its way, and I had like a brand that I had set up, and I thought, hey, maybe I'll take a real shot at like making a living doing this. And so at that time I was asking a lot of questions about like how feasible that is, and how maybe how dumb that is. And I didn't really, I guess I couldn't find the answers, or many answers that really covered everything that I was looking for. So I kind of just like tried it on my own, and as I did it, I tried to share back to the JUCE community like what I was learning, more or less. And so that talk was kind of the culmination of sort of that first year, just learning and trying to answer the questions that I originally reached out for.
And what have there been kind of new revelations since that talk? So the talk was last November. Have there been new revelations or realizations since then that you've come to?
I think in some ways I'm still trying to take my own advice. I mean, there are new revelations in that I've learned a lot about myself. Trying to do this. And like I still think that the conclusions I drew for that talk are conclusions that I need to like remind myself of, which are things like, it can be pretty tough. I mean, it's pretty tough to start a business, but it's also pretty tough to like get into this market. And I think it was a little bit. It was too much of an undertaking to be kind of that. To start a business, but also at this point, I was still really, really new to making audio software. Even though I had one, a plugin or two under my belt, there's just so much to learn about DSP, about writing and distributing C++ products, and if you're still learning those things, then like taking the plunge to running a business at the same time is a lot. And so that was one of the conclusions that I drew at the time, but it's still sinking in, I guess.
Would you change anything if you could go back and do it again?
Yeah, I would. I would write much more software, many more plugins before trying to make a business out of it. And that, I think that was also one of the conclusions I drew in the talk. It kind of just changes your priorities when you need to share. I guess when you're making a product that that has to pay rent, it's a different sort of mindset versus when you're making a product because something is just really interesting and really exciting and you want to share it. and that's sort of an interesting, I guess, like another interesting question to have to wrangle with when you're still learning how to write a plugin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so many. I imagine that there's so many different angles that you have to think about. You know, from the technical angle, all the way to you have the marketing angle, you have the business angle that you have to consider. That's a lot of different hats that you have to wear.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have been able to try this, and
and I imagine your C++ has grown exponentially, just needing to continually reiterate on the idea of needing to distribute across multiple operating systems, and just needing to build production quality software on your own, I imagine. I think
I learned a lot. And I think I'm still learning a lot every day. So that's awesome. That's one of my favorite things about it.
That's great. So wrapping up, let's talk a little bit about what do you have in the future. So the blueprint, which is the name of the JUCE of the JUCE module with the React binding. So when is that coming out? And you've talked a little bit about your long-term plans for that, but what other things do you have going on for the near future?
Yeah, so I mean, sharing Blueprint is kind of like at the forefront for me. That'll be next week, Monday, I think. Yeah. Monday, I'm planning on putting it out there. And in the short term, my future plan is really just like try to share it, try to facilitate conversation around it, and see if people are interested. And who knows? Like maybe people look at it and think like, no, I don't want that, and suddenly like I don't have a project on my hands. Like that's a potential future path. But hopefully people get excited about it. People try it out and start building products with it. And so a lot of the next several months for me will be just trying to like move the ball, I guess, like move the project in a path that helps everybody. And then sort of in tandem with that, I have my plugin coming out, my next plugin coming out early August, and I'm working through the beta process. Still working on kind of the final aesthetic. And that'll take me through the next few months. And then I've got a couple, I have sort of a long line of future plugin ideas that I'm just kind of like in the queue, ready to go. So
that's great.
We'll see.
So I actually had two final questions. One is, so you've seen the podcast from last week with Jules, and we talk a little bit about Soul and about the future of audio programming. And I'm curious, with your JavaScript experience and with your web experience and everything, and also with your mobile development experience, where do you see the future of audio programming? What do you see happening in the future?
Well, I'll say this at least. I am really psyched about Soul. I think that is a really cool idea, and specifically, like I listened to that last podcast and hearing Jules talk about how this notion of a Soul patch could kind of change the notion of a plugin is incredible. I think that's so exciting. And I'm also really excited. One of the reasons I think that I'm really excited to share Blueprint is that in some ways I think it could be it could be kind of like part of the same trajectory, like in the way that you could have a plugin that fetches Soul code from a server, compiles it on the fly, and like boom, it's there in your DAW making sound. In the same way, like if your application user interface is completely JavaScript, then you could write a plugin that fetches the JavaScript from the server and evaluates it on the spot, and then like boom, your UI's there. So
Yeah.
So what does the future of audio programming look like? I don't really know, but I think it would be awesome to. It would be super awesome to see something like being able to kind of like send a soul patch down and like send a React bundle down and just like sort of load up a plugin on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd just be so cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And what about mobile? Do you see that extending beyond where it is presently, or do you think that it's reached its full potential?
Good question. I don't really know. You know, it's I see more and more companies like getting on the AUV3 train, and I've seen some like sort of like loose conversation on various forums around the internet about how like people are really downloading mobile apps for making music a lot, and there's a lot of activity, and so you know I think I think we're still kind of figuring out what iOS music making is, and what that will look like. And so that makes me think that it's actually a pretty exciting time to ship an AUV3 app and just sort of like dip your toe and see, you know, see how people are engaging with these apps. And
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I don't really know where it'll be in the next few years, but I'm really curious to see.
Me too. Great stuff. I think that's a good place for us to finish things off.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Nick. And one more time, just for everybody that missed the first couple times around, the GitHub link is github.com/Nick-Thompson if you want to check out the blueprint, which is Nick's React /JUCE binding module. So thank you so much for your time, Nick, and I will see you again soon. Hopefully in November for ADC.
Oh, I would love to be there. I hope so.
Great stuff.
Thanks so much. Like, this was great. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah. Take care now.